Doom: The Dark Ages is loud, bombastic, fast, chunky, big, verbose, and at its best, you feel like you are absolutely ripping and tearing across the battlefields in the war against Hell on a scale you don't see in either Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal. And if that's what you want, without any more thoughts on the matter, you don't need to watch the rest of this review. But I do have more thoughts on the matter, and they're not all good, because at the heart of it, Doom: The Dark Ages doesn't want you to think, it wants you to flow. But it keeps throwing up hurdles in its own way that make it difficult to get fully lost in the sauce. And the consequence is that you begin to notice the cardboard cutouts and flimsy set dressing that is being used to pad this game out. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal both had a story, but it was just enough context here or there to explain the progression from one space to the next and the mounting threat of Hell's armies rising against the Slayer. In Doom: The Dark Ages, the story is so flimsy, it would be an insult to paper to call it paper thin. For the first half, you are jarringly snapped from one situation to the next in a way that all feels disorienting and frankly meaningless. This is further compounded by the fact that, for a game that is so much about the heights and intensity of action, every character speaks in the exact same deadpan register. They're utterly interchangeable, and the most minuscule of stoic glances is meant to carry the weight of emotions that nobody in the game ever seems capable of feeling, despite the chaos unfolding around them. This does get better in the second half of the game, where some unique and interesting events unfold that actually feel naturally connected. Now, it's probably already too late to stop someone from thinking, it's a Doom game, why are you expecting it to have a good story? And my answer is, because Doom: The Dark Ages keeps bringing up its story. I'm making such a big deal about it because the game is casting such a spotlight on it. Ultimately, I think this is an area where Doom should have stuck with the less is more approach. But okay, does the minute-to-minute gameplay feel good? Do the guns feel good? Do the enemies explode into sufficiently gory paste as I sweep across the battlefield? Does the shield feel amazing? Honestly, it's a mixed bag. The game does a lot to minimize the amount of effort to enter into combat. There's no reloading. Despite the game's tagline of stand and fight, you do a remarkable amount of zipping across the battlefield thanks to your shield charge, and everything you need to get health, armor, and ammo is either bursting from your slain enemies or scattered across the battlefields. The guns feel great. The new Pulverizer and the Ravager alternative being my two favorites. The shield also feels great, covering the gamut of range weapon, defensive bulwark, and aggressive opener. The parry system is also often fun and adds a bit of a bullet hell element to combat. And unlike Doom Eternal, there are rarely moments where a specific gun is required for a specific enemy. But this is both good and bad. It means you can play with whatever gun catches your interest, but it also means that I found some of the enemies lacked personality compared to the previous Doom games, and I barely ended up using some of the weapons in my arsenal. Lastly, as exciting as the game wants the Atlan mech combat sequences and the dragon riding sequences to be, both are pretty lackluster. The Atlan sequences were never more complicated than punch dodge, at a glacial pace that is meant to convey the size of the mechs and monsters fighting. And the combat on Dragonback is so boring and uninspired, I came to resent the arrival of my Cyber Dragon and rejoice when I got to dismount to get back to the pacing of the ground-based gunplay. The last thing I will say about Doom: The Dark Ages is about how the out-of-the-box graphical and audio settings were. While it is nice to see such a robust difficulty modifier page that allows you to tune the game to your liking and opens up interesting options for replaying, the default graphical settings, especially HDR, required a lot of manual adjusting on my part to get the game looking good. Initially, the game was washed out even with HDR enabled. I don't have the most sophisticated setup, I'll admit, but it took about 40 minutes of adjusting various settings to get it running smoothly at 100 frames per second while looking good. The audio I also found was balanced to emphasize the chunk of weapons and the squelch of dying demons, but it really buried the game's soundtrack in the process, which I suppose is part of the reason why I found the soundtrack lackluster compared to previous Doom games. We know there's more to that story, but taking it at face value, I just didn't find the music quite as impactful, and it didn't punctuate the set-piece moments of the game the way I was expecting. Doom: The Dark Ages at times really lacks cohesion, especially in its story and the framing of its blockbuster summer action movie aesthetic. Taking on the role of the Slayer has always been about jumping from one hell-torn environment to the next, mowing down demons, with only what was absolutely necessary to connect the pieces together. But the Dark Ages lacks even the most basic connections, literally firing the Slayer into battlefields in a jarring and disconnected way, at least for the first half. While guns and enemies are plenty and powerful, there are times where many of their personalities aren't given the room to shine, and the game's default settings required quite a bit of work on my part to get them into a place that felt like what the game was supposed to run like. Overall, I was ripping and tearing my way through Doom: The Dark Ages, but I was searching for a lot of things. Searching for that spark. Searching for an emotional weight to the story. Searching for the right settings. And searching for a reason to be as hyped as the game wanted me to be. I never quite found it, but I finished it, so that says something too.